Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Nicola Donnelly. We warmly welcome the family of Gunner Edward Michael John O'Neill. His story will be told shortly by Lieutenant Adam Smith from the Australian Army, who is the great-nephew of Gunner Edward Michael John O'Neill. This evening, we are honoured to acknowledge the Australian Political Exchange Council's 19th delegation from Japan. We also warmly welcome members of the Royal Military College Duntroon 2024 graduating class. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family, visitors to the memorial, and students on behalf of Tenterfield High School, Tenterfield, New South Wales. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If you require a seat, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Gunner Edward Michael John O'Neill. Edward O'Neill was born on the 1st of April 1920 in Taralga, New South Wales. Known as Eddie, he was one of 10 children born to Henry and Elizabeth O'Neill. Little is known of Eddie's early life. The family ran a farming property known as Frogmore Estate in the region. And Eddie likely attended school near Taralga. After completing his compulsory education, he found work as a clerk, though in his attestation papers, he did not state where he was employed. Eddie enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 23rd of July 1941 at Paddington in Sydney. 3 days after enlisting, he marched out to join the No. 1 Field Regiment in Canberra with the rank of private. Eddie embarked from Sydney with reinforcements from the 2nd 6th Battalion in early November 1941. Early in the voyage, he was admitted to the ship's hospital with influenza, but quickly recovered and passed the rest of the journey without incident. Eddie arrived in the Middle East in late November 1941 and spent the rest of the year continuing to train for active service. In late January 1942, Eddie was taken on the strength of a newly formed 2nd and 4th Light Anti-Aircraft Regiment in Palestine as a gunner. Equipped with Bofors anti-aircraft guns, the regiment provided protection from aircraft for the 9th Brigade. They spent the next few months training, preparing for Al Alamein campaign. From September, the regiment was allocated to close protection of artillery, supply lines, headquarters, troop concentration during the Second Battle of Al Alamein in October and November. Aside from a brief stay at the 7th Australian General Hospital for treatment for myopic astigmatism in late November, Eddie remained with the regiment for the whole of 1942 and was with the regiment when they departed the Middle East at the end of January 1943. The regiment arrived back in Australia in late February 1943 and spent the next few months of a mix of home duties and leave. During this period, Eddie ran into trouble with military authorities. He was charged with going absent without leave on the 3rd of April and fined £2 for his misbehaviour. After just over 5 months in Australia, the 2nd 4th Light Anti-Aircraft Regiment departed Cairns on the 3rd of August 1943, arriving at Milne Bay in Papua 3 days later. The regiment spent the rest of August training in a new tropical climate before moving into operations in the Finchhaven area of New Guinea. On the 12th of September, Eddie passed the required test to operate as a driver-mechanic with the regiment. At some stage on the 24th of September, Gunner Edward O'Neill was killed in action, possibly during or ahead of a bombing raid on the regimental headquarters. He was 23 years old. Eddie's father, Henry, died on the 25th of September 1943, one day after the death of his son. The family was not informed of Eddie's death until the 14th of October. Eddie's remains were buried near where he fell in Finchhaven. After the war, his body was exhumed and reinterred at Leigh War Cemetery. His name is also listed on the Roll of Honour on my left among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. But this is just one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Gunner Edward Michael John O'Neill, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and for the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age should not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you a very pleasant evening. Thank you.